Greenbrier, West Virginia to begin 2024 training camp, and Amari Cooper is on that bus as well. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, subscribe, get into it. It's a vibe. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. One of the biggest storylines heading into the beginning of 2024 Cleveland Browns training camp, rookies reporting on Monday, veterans reporting Tuesday, was certainly going to be the status of veteran number one wide receiver Amari Cooper. Browns have done a lot of work the last couple of years in rebuilding that wide receiver room from top to bottom and everywhere in between. Amari Cooper, as we all know, off of two good seasons here with the Cleveland Browns, solid numbers, well over 1,000 yards both years, certainly has turned into one of the better moves of the Andrew Berry era for the Cleveland Browns. Didn't give up much, but certainly got a large return. Amari, with no money guaranteed for 2025 and with a wide receiver market that was booming as far as wide receivers getting paid. Only issue was we were talking about a lot of wide receivers coming off their first contract to their second contracts. Amari Cooper, this is a question of second contract to third contract. Already that tough wide receiver age of 30. Amari and the Browns found a way to at least satisfy both parties for 2024. Amari still remains without any guaranteed money for 2025. Amari Cooper will receive up to possibly $5 million raise in 2024, allow most of it incentive laden. When you have an owner that is willing to throw money around, it makes it easier to do these types of moves. Now, I have said, and I said 1,000 times, the Browns get into these negotiations and they usually find up winning. They usually end up with a deal that they are happy with. Sure, they're happy the player's happy, but they are more happy that they are satisfied and they are happy with the deal. So Amari now could possibility to make $5 million more in 2024. Will go to camp, will be contributing right away, trying to hopefully rekindle that relationship, certainly with Deshaun Watson. That was looking good last year until everything certainly just fell apart early after Deshaun only playing 6 games. We saw some promise from the two of them to close out 2022. Saw what could have been in 2023. And Amari Cooper just kept going out week in, week out. It didn't matter who the quarterback was. Amari Cooper didn't care. He played, and he played like a solid receiver. Now, the Browns, as I mentioned, they have found a way to rebuild this entire room. Haven't had a first-round pick. Made the move for Amari Cooper. Week and a half later, you made the move for Deshaun Watson, and you had no way whatsoever to bring in another first-round wide receiver unless you traded for one, Jerry Jeudy. Unless you traded for a second-round wide receiver, Elijah Moore. Unless you drafted a third-round wide receiver, Cedric Tillman. Unless you drafted another third-round wide receiver, David Bell. Unless you drafted a day 3 wide receiver, Jamari Thrash. And all of a sudden, since the Amari Cooper trade a little over 2 years ago, that entire room is completely rebuilt. The Browns, for them, they're covered both ways. They had no issue committing to Amari Cooper for 2025. The issue was committing to 2026. So with that, hey, if Amari goes out there, hits these incentives, it says to the Browns, hey, we're ready to do this again. But maybe we're still not ready to commit to 2026. It is their right. If Amari goes out there, puts up 95 receptions, over 1,300, 1,400, somebody's going to be willing to say, hey, Amari Cooper, we'll guarantee you 25. We'll certainly guarantee you 2026. Now, if the Browns aren't comfortable with that, now all of a sudden they have fallback options. They will have a first-round pick in the 2025 NFL draft. they certainly will always have a way to have cap flexibility and say a certain former Clemson wide receiver who's most likely playing his last season down in Cincinnati wants to travel up 71 and come play for currently the better franchise in the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns. Browns have the money to make that happen as well. So everybody kind of wins here. Amari gets more, which he certainly deserved. No question about it. Amari Cooper deserved more money. The market was bountiful. It was paying more. He certainly has done everything that he's been asked to do in his time here. So there is no question about that whatsoever. So now with Amari, and look, this is where it is at for this team. And look, the Browns eventually are going to have to find a ways to maybe cut some money. I'm not saying it's going to be Amari Cooper, but you have a very expensive offensive line. You could maybe lose $15 million off the offensive line for 2025, a certain left tackle, and we'll get to him in a little bit. Certainly a right tackle you could move on after this 2025 season and save a boatload of money by plugging in a guy like DeJuan Jones. The defensive side of the ball is Darius Smith, a one-year deal. Maybe he could be here again in 2025. He could not be. So the Browns are always finding ways to make sure that they're still in it, or they can get out of any deal anytime that they're not completely and totally satisfied with. There was a lot of talk to Brandon Ayuk for Amari Cooper. But the San Francisco 49ers have a hard time playing the better player right now in Brandon Ayuk. Why in the world was Amari Cooper going to go there and just play for the San Francisco 49ers for the goodness out of his heart? He wanted more money. He deserved more money. He got more money. And that's the key. But now it's going to be different for Amari this year. It's not so much that it was Amari Cooper and a bunch of other guys playing wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. Amari Cooper has a guy that the Cleveland Browns are extremely high in Jerry Jeudy. They were high in him for a couple of years before they finally acquired him. They were so high in him, he wasn't even here 2 weeks before the Browns handed him a big, beautiful contract extension. You have Elijah Moore playing for hopefully a contract extension or a nice free agent deal somewhere else. Cedric Tillman, a lot of the talk has been fantastic to this point about his spring, about his early summer to this point. And again, I was one of Cedric Tillman's biggest advocate last year. It was a really tough position for a rookie to be in when every time you turned around, you had a different quarterback throwing you the ball. It's a tough spot to be in. It's so much to learn the film, learn the routes, but now you're learning a different quarterback. Everybody throws the ball differently, throws on a different time, arm angle, this, that, and the other thing. So Cedric Tillman could break out. So Amari Cooper may not meet the statistical production he met his first 2 years with the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns can still be a really, really good team. But either way, Amari Cooper is satisfied. The Cleveland Browns are satisfied, and the Cleveland Browns can keep themselves from taking one of the best moves of the Andrew Berry era and maybe having it turn into a bad move where they end up paying a wide receiver who maybe starts to decline as he starts to go later and later into his early 30s. We're going to continue here. Your latest Locked On Browns. Who's in? Who's out? Who'll be on the practice field? First practice of 2024 training camp. We're going to talk about it. We continue, and I appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. This time of the year, and I always say, as a New York Met fan, guys, just get me to training camp. Get me to late summer. I'm not talking about seeing every game. I'm certainly not talking about going to games. Well, that has certainly changed. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. You get a view from your seat and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. They have zone deals. You can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. Why not? You're in the same section. Maybe it's a row or two difference, a seat or two difference, but you're going to get big, big savings. They have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So you need to head over to the Game Time app and take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. Terms apply. Make sure you create an account and use the redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Again, download the Game Time app. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now that the buses are on their way to Greenbrier, the question certainly is for the Browns, and there were a lot of them, and we're going to go through the list right now of who is ready to start and take the practice field on Thursday, and who it's going to be a little bit, and who we waiting on. So first off, the active non-football injury list, also known as the NFI. Nyheim Hines is not apparently ready to go just yet. He is on that list. Also is Greg Newsome. Now, the NFI list, non-football injury list, if you remember, Nyheim Hines was hurt last summer, right before training camp. I believe it was a jet ski incident, and it certainly blew up his knee. But Nyheim Hines is progressing, certainly where the Browns are hoping for. Also, this means that maybe he was either A, unable to take the conditioning test, or B, didn't yet pass the conditioning test. Little loopholes you have to go through, and certainly you have to make sure that players are physically, mentally, medically ready to go. These conditioning tests stand for a reason. Greg Newsome, also on the NFI list with a hamstring. Why Greg is there is maybe a little bit of a blurry spot for me. We know Greg was dinged up a little bit last year. Did something happen? Because even if something happened in OTAs or something of that nature, I guess that qualifies you for the NFI list. But, that's where we're at. Greg Newsome, a little bit of a hamstring right now. But the other thing is, look, you shouldn't be busting if you have any little tiny ailment right now. There is plenty of time to get yourself ready, certainly for August and then certainly September. We have 5 players who were put on the physically unable to perform list. The Anthony Bell, I certainly haven't heard much about the Anthony Bell, but a shin. So again, this is either A, couldn't pass the test, or B, couldn't take the test. Nick Chubb, look, we all know, obviously, I don't think anybody is surprised that Nick's name is on this list. I have been one that has, stated that I think maybe we start to see Nick Chubb when the leaves start to turn brown, but none of us truly know to this point the status of Nick Chubb. We all want Nick. We all hopefully want to see him as good as soon as we possibly can, but we got to make sure. This is 2 serious knee injuries for a player of Nick Chubb's caliber. And I still remember the first time I saw a video when he was at Georgia after that heinous injury he suffered, and he was running almost full speed on a treadmill. I got a good friend of mine, Matt Waldman, big University of Georgia guy, lives out that way. I was like, bro, what is this about? This can't be right. And he's like, oh no. And basically said, from what he knew, it was a medical marvel that Nick Chubb was already up and doing this, and let alone most likely continuing his career. So, for Nick to go through that again, it was certainly a brutal brawl for a guy like Nick Chubb. But if there's one guy in the entire NFL you told me to bet my life on, as far as no doubt that they can come back from kind of anything, it's probably Nick Chubb. The guy has an absolute heart of lion. There's no doubt about it. Tough SOB. Nick, we'll see you soon. This doesn't mean that Nick is ruled out of week 1. None of these players are ruled out of week 1. This means that you cannot practice. There are certain hurdles you have to go over. So Nick Chubb is certainly in that group, along with the Anthony Bell. Jack Conklin, first week of the season last year, on this list. Could be the slow, steady with Jack Conklin. And, again, Jack is such a consummate veteran, 2-time All-Pro. Nobody's concerned about John Conklin, again, in July. He might not even play in the preseason. But if he's practicing once preseason games start, I think we got a pretty good idea that Jack Conklin will be ready to roll. And, if Jack Conklin's ready to go, Jack Conklin is a starting right tackle. There is no debate here. Jack Conklin is the best offensive tackle on this roster. So if Jack Conklin is ready to go week 1, Jack Conklin will start week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. Dalvin Tomlinson, knee, again, veteran, big fella. Dalvin, takes a lot of punishment, certainly gives a lot of punishment. But as a defensive tackle, you're absorbing a lot of hits, and that's part of your job, certainly in what made Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah such a special player last year, why his production was through the stinking roof. It's because a player like Dalvin Tomlinson doing the dirty work and, helping his players out. So it could just be the slow and steady approach with Dalvin Tomlinson. No reason to amp him up now. The Browns have, as we all know, you still have Maurice Hurst. You still have Shelby Harris. You have Quentin Jefferson. You have Hall. You have Briggs. You also have Siaki Ika. There is no reason Dalvin Tomlinson needs to be going out there and getting down and dirty against Wyatt Teller, Ethan Posick, and Joel Bitonio this early in the summer. There's no reason why risk it. He's too valuable. You know he's right now. There is Dalvin Tomlinson as your top defensive tackle. And then, although the room is much better now than it has been. Last year was good, but I've never been able to say that the Browns defensive tackle room was good. And now what is my 8th season? It's going to be good again, and it's mostly going to be better. But Dalvin Tomlinson is your top tier, and then everybody else is around here, which is fine. It is still a great room, but there's no reason to be risking Dalvin Tomlinson this early in the summer. Jedrick Wills, physically unable to perform list with a knee. And, I was not so kind at times with Jedrick Wills' play. But you go back a couple years ago, I guess it was 21, opener on the road in Kansas City against the Chiefs. And if you remember, Jedrick Wills left that game early on a cart, taken off on a cart. Sent out a couple of tweets during the game, rooting for his boys, hoping that, his not being there wouldn't hurt the team. They'd still find a way to dethrone the champs. And went out there the next week and he was playing. There is not very often that a player leaves a game 1 week on a cart and then is back out there playing the following week. And I've still been critical of Jedrick's play at times. And again, this isn't all on Jedrick Wills. The Cleveland Browns drafted a lifelong right tackle with the whole intention of transitioning him to the left side. So with the fact that Jedrick Wills has not become, as a number 10 overall pick, a Pro Bowler, a stalwart at left tackle, this is not on Jedrick Wills alone. This was probably a bit of a miss for the Browns and Andrew Berry as well. You drafted somebody kind of blind, hoping that they could do something that you thought and perceived that they could do. Well, Jedrick hasn't been able to do so at this point. So, and here's the other thing. Jedrick Wills held off the surgery during the regular season for a long time. Jedrick Wills was trying to find his way back. Can I get enough strength in my knee? With a brace, can I find a way to be out there in these games with my teammates? And that tells you a lot about the guy. He knew surgery was coming either way, but yet he still tried to rehab his way to be back, to close out the regular season, maybe even play in the playoff game. And it just became to the point where it was just too much. Doctors had to pull him, said, look, get the surgery now. So if Jed had maybe bowed out when he had first gotten hurt, Jedrick Wills would not be on the physically unable to perform list. Jedrick Wills, whatever you think about Jedrick Wills, the player, Jedrick Wills carries himself as a Cleveland Brown through and through. Maybe his last season here, but you want to know what? I apologize. Maybe I was a little more harsher on his play than maybe he deserved. But this guy went to bat for this team every single time he suited up. We're going to close it out here. Just one thing, because we always get to this with training camp and things get a little out of hand. We're going to talk about that. Don't go anywhere. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof rocks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. We close out your latest Locked On Browns. Browns on the way to Greenbrier, West Virginia, ready to tee it off again. It works so well in the summer of 2023. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We'll tee it off again at the Greenbrier in summer of 2024. As this week starts to unfold, don't be surprised if and when you're starting to hear that the defense is winning majority of team play, of reps. We already know you don't have most likely your starting left tackle. He hasn't been anointed yet. Jedrick Wills will not be participating. Jack Conklin will not be participating. DeJuan Jones will be out there, certainly. Also, Deshaun Watson, we do not know that if he is medically cleared or, medically labeled as 100%. Jerry Jeudy was a little dinged up in the spring. Jerome Ford, the running game certainly had their troubles last year, along with the offensive line, everybody together collectively as a unit. So, and if we all believe that the Cleveland Browns defense, and I certainly believe, as good as they were last year, they most likely are probably going to take it up a notch this year. So don't be surprised if and when you get a tweet from this account. Browns defense is winning most of these reps. Wow, Browns offense can't seem to get out of their own way just yet. Also, the Cleveland Browns are in the process of installing, I don't know, nobody's given us a percentage, but somewhat of a new offense. Ken Dorsey, your new offensive coordinator, certainly changes within your offensive coaching. New offensive line coach, new running back coach. So the expectation, in my opinion, should be that we should hear that the offense is a little bit behind the defense. So let's not get alarmed. Let's not, oh no, how did we extend Barry? How did we extend Kevin Stefanski? There's a lot of newness to the Cleveland Browns offense. You may not necessarily see it in players. But system, coaching, it's going to take a bit. If y'all remember, I said last summer, with all this newness and new defensive coordinator and new players on defense, it shouldn't hit the ground running. I was dead wrong. I was definitely dead wrong. But I think it's going to be a little bit different for the offense this year, and it's going to take a little time for this to resonate, marinate, all that good stuff. Browns did make a couple of roster moves today. They have signed defensive end Jeremiah Martin. If you remember, Jeremiah Martin was around last summer. And from the UFL, they have signed Pete Smith. I'm sure you're happy wherever you are, big guy. Offensive tackle, Jim Schwartz. Makes sense that you brought in another offensive tackle. Browns are kind of light on tackles to begin with, and with Jedrick Wills not being a non-participant right out of the gate, and Jack Conklin not participating right out of the gate. Again, we don't know how long any of these guys are going to be out. We could have guys back as soon as Friday. Could have guys that's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then Nick Chubb, we're a guy like we're not even sure. So you camp bodies. You bring bodies in, and you got to do what you got to do. You got to get your practices in. You want to get your 11-11s in. You want to get your 7-on-7s in. And if you were allowed to have 90 players on the practice field, you find a way to get 90 players on the practice field. That's what you do. It's just handling business. It doesn't mean anybody's roster spots in danger, none of that stuff. But as you can tell, we're about to embark. I did a show last night, and I joined a couple of guys last night for a show, and they asked me what my expectation was for the 2024 Cleveland Browns. And I said, I honestly think it's the expectation and my belief is that the Cleveland Browns are going to be your AFC North champions in 2024. I think they should have a record of 12-5. I think Baltimore defensively is going to come back to the pack a little bit. And if that's the case, it's going to take away from some of the magic of Lamar Jackson. One of the reasons Lamar Jackson is so incredible was that the Ravens defense was so good. Lamar was getting out there, getting tons of reps, tons of plays, defenses that he was just running into the ground. And at some point, just taking straight advantage of them, taking their money, taking their souls. That might not be the case this year for the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of newness on that defense. Defense coordinator, a lot of new defensive talent, certainly not upgrades from some of the guys they had lost. Cincinnati Bengals and, Joe Burrow, whether he's looking, like young Eminem or Cody Rhodes or whatever the hell that haircut is, I got no idea. But again, a lot now missing. Losing DJ Reader was brutal because with DJ Reader, the Bengals were a solid defense who got off the field very quickly, shut down the run. Secondary probably picking up, getting better. That was my biggest question with the Bengals secondary last year. And again, was right. But with the Bengals defense, if they got nobody up front to slow down the run, clog the lanes, this, that, and the other thing, teams just run at will. Bengals kind of made a mistake, and they paid linebackers. as opposed to paying defensive linemen. It's a difficult, slippery slope to get into because, yes, linebackers, but as we all saw, you saw last year with Jermaine Pratt, having Wyatt Teller say, "Big boy, I'm going to take you for a ride. I'm going to take you for a ride 20 yards down the field." So that's a question. The Steelers, look, Mike Tomlin is a fantastic coach. The Steelers, though, are also not doing themselves any favors by going 9-8. They're not. Steelers need to go 6-11. Steelers need to go 5-12. They need to get in a position to find out who is going to be their Lamar Jackson for the Ravens, their Joe Burrow for the Bengals, hopefully Deshaun Watson for the Browns. Who is going to be that guy for the next few years to battle it out here? Who's going to be that Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback? Because it's most likely not going to be Russell Wilson. Camp is here. The boys are on their way to Greenbrier. We got hit on a ton today. Coop deal satisfied. Browns are satisfied. Coop satisfied. No money after 2024. It leaves the Browns in an enviable position to go further. Who's in? Who's out? NFI list, PUP list. We've covered all of that. And of course, do not be surprised if the Browns offense struggles in the beginning of training camp. I am Jeff Lloyd. I'm your host here at Locked On Browns. I appreciate every single one of you that make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. If you are not part of the everyday crowd by now, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Become an everydayer. You won't regret it. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.